But how about the historical record? Because generally we've been talking about, filling out those gaps, what might have been, what could have been, what should have been, and that's true of the present as well. What about making things different just some of the time? And the reason why I ask is that Danny and I have a Colombian friend, a novelist friend, who actually changed the time in which there was an airplane at an air show went into the grandstand with a particular prime minister, and he changed the year. And when we asked him about that, he just said, well, our leaders invented a national history for us. It was full of lies. Why shouldn't I invent a national history that's full of lies? And at which point my professor, the person who hired me, a British empiricist, walked out in disgust. Yes, because it is breaking a rule that we feel quite strongly here.
I guess I'm not sure I'd walk out in disgust, but I'm kind of on that side of it. That if something happened on such and so date, you don't change that. And I try to keep as accurate as I can. And I always remember this with Remarkable Creatures of just desperately wanting to have things happen at a different pace or a different time, because we live our lives not as a novel, the way a novel has an arc 3/4 of the way through, and then the climax and the denouement or that. Our lives are much more chaotic and unanecdotal, and we spend our lives making stories out of our lives and shaping them. So if somebody, you were saying if Carolina Otello, if all the Bloomsbury set wrote about a dinner party, they would all have a different point of view. We're all like that. We go on holiday together, and then we come back and tell completely different stories about what happened. And you'll never, I got stung by a stingray, and I was in the hospital, and then this happened, and this amazing doctor, and you kind of shape your day, and novels are the same way. But I feel like when I'm handling history, I have to try not to. What I tend to do is blur it just a little bit. Like I'd get away with having the plane crash into the grandstand by not mentioning the date.
Yeah.
And hoping people don't quite notice it. Maybe it's slightly off, but I don't make a feature out of changing history or historical facts. I just blur it a little bit.
Okay. I suppose if we'd been educated in schools in certain totalitarian states, we might wonder about who's making history and so on. But we can trust our historians, can't we? But you've both talked elsewhere about the power of story. And the fact that, that everything we understand, from the Bible on, from being a child on, we understand through stories, and that interpretations are always different, but interpretations can actually be dangerous themselves. In other words,
but also valid.
Also valid, yes. But you'd stand by an interpretation.
Yes.
So when you get everybody else at the dinner party writes about the dinner party.
Well, I think what I'd do is I'd sit looking at them all, thinking that reveals a psychological truth about you and you and you and you. You needed to see what happened from a point of view that you could handle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like it's like reading sometimes reading a very dismissive review. You think to yourself, aha, what a lot this says about the person who wrote it.
So, how would you define fiction then? I mean, the books that have angered people the most have been definitely fiction, but somehow if you're writing about a place that other people know and you have a certain interpretation that is well-rounded because you spent several years on it, it can really bother people who have a different understanding of that childhood, that country, that dinner party.
Well, I think that, you go back, I would always go back to Jane Austen and the idea of a mirror held up to humanity. But the fact that there are a multiplicity of interpretations is a reflection on the infinite variety of humanity and its need to see things in a certain way. All it does is illuminate even more the oddity and randomness of humankind. Because somebody said to me, I mean, a journalist said to me not very long ago, talking about, ideas for novels. And he said to me, but, will you ever run out of topics? And I said, well, as long as human beings go on behaving as they're behaving, the answer is no.
But what do you say to the great aunt who comes in, having read the novel? How would you explain it to them that everybody is there?
Well, I mean, a lot of the older generation of my family have been extremely indignant and insisted on finding themselves where nothing personal was intended.
Yes.
Well, I'd just say to them that I'm afraid it's out there. Bite down on it. You may not like it. I wasn't thinking about you.
That's even worse.
You may be distressed to hear.
They are.
But I'm not writing to. I totally agree with you about being careful of accuracy and a kind of delicacy about living people's feelings. That's a very different area from pleasing people who have an axe to grind because they're somehow related to you, and they find it hard to deal with the fact that you're published. That's very different.
Yeah. I'm just still struggling with how to define fiction.
Okay.
So I don't even know. It's like sort of my son years ago when he was 5 saying, "What is art?" It's very hard to. I mean, for me, fiction is a story that I have control of, and I'm shaping it so that you have an emotional, or maybe emotional is the wrong word, but you have an experience, you have a journey through it, and I'm guiding you.
And also a historical place or a place in the contemporary world provides certain constraints that allow you to have a journey to start with.
Yes, except you're not saying this is how it is. You're saying this is how it was in the past or now for that group of people or this group of people, but none of that might apply to you.
Yeah.
So, this is how it was for them.
But there's a wonderful thing that you said, Joanna, once, see if I can paraphrase you badly, that a writer isn't there to be a prophet, but a writer is there to invite you into a space and to think with you. Which
Exactly.
I think, I want to put that on my wall.
I mean, I know somebody like Coleridge thought that writers, poets particularly, were prophets. My view is we're interpreters and translators. And, in your case, you're translating the people of the past to the people of the present. I'm, displaying some of the characteristics of people of the present. But none of it's definitive. We're neither of us saying this is how it is.
But I would say it's that certain kind of humility. This is what I see. This is just what I see.
Yes.
And also, if you're inviting people into a space, you're inviting them to leave that space thinking new things and asking new questions.
Yes.
Sort of quite a friendly space.
Well, I think it's also, I feel with my novels that I very much want to start the conversation. I mean, I remember a very famous person who is actually gay saying that she could tell her very conventional family she was gay by giving them a copy of one of my novels to read, and then that was the kind of shoehorn into the conversation. And there are so many conversations that are actually impossible to have. So,
but
maybe a novel, can be the icebreaker.
Well, I think it definitely can be in the case of your books and your books, and that's what makes them distinct, and that's why you're such a good pair to speak to together.